Have you ever noticed how, despite the ray gun being supposedly the same in every Call of Duty Zombies game, it always feels drastically different? If you're a Zombies fan, you probably said yes, and I've noticed that too. This is what I'm calling the ray gun phenomenon, and we're going to try and break it down today to see exactly why that happens. But first, we need to go back and look at how the ray gun actually came to be. When we talk about iconic weapons in video games, we usually say the super shotgun, the hidden blade, the master sword, the crowbar, maybe even Mario's shoe, but I think there's one weapon missing from that list. The ray gun is a completely timeless gun that transcends all other weapons from Call of Duty and even all other weapons in general. The concept of a ray gun is really old, it's not new. No matter how many crazy or wacky wonder weapons get added, for some reason, the ray gun just always sticks out as the wonder weapon, whether it's good or bad. And, as we'll come to see here, the ray gun has had some very high highs and some very low lows over the years. The ray gun was created by Maxwell Porter, the weapons artist for Call of Duty World at War, as an experimental weapon he wanted to get into the game. He made it on his own time, stating that he was inspired by old retro cereal boxes that had sci-fi toys in them. This eventually got snuck into the game as an Easter egg in the Little Resistance campaign mission Just for Fun, which is definitely one of Call of Duty's best campaign secrets ever, if I do say so myself. The wiki actually credits Jesse Snyder as the designer of the ray gun, who almost got fired for it because he didn't consult anyone else, but Activision and Treyarch themselves credit Porter, so this is probably a mix-up, and I'm guessing that Snyder is probably the person responsible for taking the ray gun and putting it in the campaign, but Porter is the actual creator of the ray gun itself. When Porter heard that there was going to be a hidden zombies mode, he took his weapon to the design team and begged them to put it in the mode. He said that the designers were actually pretty ecstatic about it and rushed to put it in the game, surprisingly. Funnily enough, actually, the playtesters would yell and get excited when they got the ray gun, and that means that the excitement of the ray gun wasn't just created by the community. There's just something about it that's so intrinsically amazing to all of our brains. Getting excited for a ray gun is a universal experience that everyone loves. If you think about it in sort of an abstract way, and you know that the Zombies mode was evolved and developed based off of the community, you can almost pretty much say that Treyarch themselves were the start of the Zombies fan community. The visual look of the ray gun is only half the picture though, because the sound is what really made this thing exciting. Colin Ayers is responsible for the sound of the ray gun, and it was actually his first completely solo sound design that made it into Call of Duty. Imagine your very first own sound you make for a gun is literally the ray gun. That guy must be on the moon all the time. Colin also told us that the way they achieved the alien space ray effect was by having the sound of the gun shoot in all sorts of different directions to give this huge echo effect in whatever room it was in. Usually when we talk about the ray gun, we talk about Maxwell Porter, and yeah, it was his creation, but I think Colin here and Brian Toohey are probably just as quintessential in the creation of this thing. But I guess Porter's and Ayers and Toohey's X2 ray gun probably isn't the best name for a gun. While the ray gun was a fun toy for campaign, where it really shined was in Zombies. If you spun the mystery box enough and got lucky, you might get this little guy, and this is when you just knew you weren't going to get to a high round. A combo like the ray gun and MG42 are pretty much unbeatable. Even today in 2024, I still get excited when I get these two together. This thing has 180 rounds to fire off, which is usually enough to last you until the next max ammo. It's not really a stretch of the imagination to say that this is definitely the best weapon you can get, and to top it off, the reload speed isn't too long. It's not the shortest ever, but for the power of the weapon, the speed is pretty good at only about 3 seconds. This thing is pretty viable until about round 20 or 25, where it starts to fall off a little too hard to be super useful. There is only really one fatal double-edged sword to the ray gun, and any Zombies veteran can probably guess what I'm about to say: splash damage. When you shoot the ground or any other surface, there's a small explosion. This is great because A, you don't have to be super accurate, and B, you can shoot it on the ground in the middle of a bunch of zombies and get a bunch of kills super easily. The one problem though is that this can kill you too. Literally only shooting yourself with this once means instant death, no punches pulled. At first you think that's fine because it's not that hard to just not look down while you're shooting near you. The problem though is that splash damage bounces off zombies too, meaning if a zombie corners you and you shoot it in the face, both of you are dying together because this game is just petty sometimes. With Verrückt though, and the introduction of perks, the ray gun only got better. Now, with Juggernog, you could survive a couple of splash damage shots with the ray gun. It still does a lot of damage, and you can still totally get yourself killed with it if you're not careful, but there's definitely a line you can walk. Speed Cola makes it reload insanely fast too, at a mere 1.5 seconds, so you're almost never not shooting. Double Tap makes it shoot even faster, as if it wasn't already fast enough. Finally, Quick Revive is sort of an indirect buff to the ray gun. Because you can use the ray gun while you're downed to cover people, Quick Revive mixed with a ray gun will let your teammates get just enough time in to revive you, and even in some of the higher rounds too. The ray gun mostly took a backseat in Shinonuma because of the Wunderwaffe, but Duri's Pack-a-Punch made it come back in full force.
Pack-a-Punch! Let's believe that That's what I need! More fucking firepower!
Especially because, if you know how Duri's works, shocking yourself with the Wunderwaffe will take away your Juggernog permanently, so the ray gun is probably the much safer option for all but the ballsiest of players. Plus, it got a beautiful, shiny new coat of etched paint. The Pack-a-Punch ray gun is the Porter's X2 ray gun, and moves up from 180 shots to 240, with 40 now per load instead of 20, and does 33% more splash damage. As a general rule of thumb, the packed ray gun is pretty effective until about round 30. One of the things that the ray gun became pretty iconic for now was making crawlers. Basically, once you got to a high enough round that the splash damage wouldn't instantly kill anymore, it would instead cut the zombies' legs off and make them into crawlers. This is actually pretty great when your friend decides they need to order pizza in the middle of the match, but not so great when you're actually trying to survive because now you need to watch out for crawlers too, which takes your aim off the zombies' heads when you're using other guns. Here in Duri's we also got to learn some ray gun lore, which is that it was created by Group 935 and is infused with element 115, so that's what gives it its magical properties. The plans were actually taken from Japan though, so technically this is also partially created by the Japanese, which is kinda weird to think about. But before I go on to Black Ops, I want to briefly put the idea of what I call the ray gun phenomenon in your head. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I'm going to talk more about it later, but listen to what I say about the stats and attributes of these ray guns in your head, and then compare them to how you feel about each specific version. I promise I'll bring this up later, and it's going to feel kind of weird, so I really want you to keep watching so we can talk about that. The stats of the ray gun in Black Ops are almost identical to the World at War version, so its practicality up to round 30 still applies. The only real difference is that the color of the ring light can change when you upgrade it now. It can be red, white, green, purple, blue, or yellow, and it got a new Pack-a-Punch camo, but it's kind of a downgrade in my opinion. This is a very mid Pack-a-Punch camo, I won't lie. One pretty nice use for it now though is the Nova Crawlers in Kino, 5, and Moon. Normally these guys explode when you shoot them and they blur your vision and they slow you down, but if you kill them with the ray gun or your knife, they won't actually explode. This is actually our second double-edged sword. The average player will probably love this, but a particularly strategic player might actually want to use the Crawler's explosive gas to kill the rest of the zombies around them. So depending on what kind of player you are, you might find that as good or bad. The ray gun's biggest buff yet though probably comes from Ascension, where PhD Flopper will negate splash damage to yourself. Basically that means you can use this thing to get yourself out of corners when you're trapped now, and it makes a much more viable option to survive with. When you're stuck, just look down and start shooting everywhere, and if you're under round 40, you'll probably be fine. Black Ops 2's ray gun is, in my opinion, probably the best feeling ray gun. I can't necessarily tell you why, but something about this one just feels nice. If I really picked it apart, I think it's something about maybe the fluidity of the recoil on it and how nice the sprinting animation looks, but I'm not totally sure. It's just nice and smooth. Statistically, this thing is the exact same as the last two. The only difference now is that the front sight extends above the rail on the rear, and apparently it does less splash damage to you. The wiki claims this, but doesn't really provide any stats to back it up, and I don't really feel like spending an hour and a half of my life shooting myself with a ray gun to test it. Sorry. Side tangent real quick, this pissed me off as a kid. I have no idea why, but I was so aggravated by them changing the sights for absolutely no reason. I had this deep resentment for this ray gun because I was like, no, why would they do that? I don't know, it just like killed my little OCD brain or something. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Anyway, that's all fine and dandy till we got to Buried. See, Buried added the ray gun Mark II with its own new design. This version has a new stylistic look and is a 3-round burst instead of semi-auto, but it also has no splash damage. Because of this, they also redesigned the ray gun so that it better fit with the aesthetics of the Mark II. The window got changed from blue to green, and the materials on the surface got smoothed out. Also, now the window is red when you upgrade it, which is pretty cool. It looks alright in Buried, but I won't lie, it looks amazing in Origins. To balance this out, any given player can only hold one of these at a time. That means if you have a ray gun, you can't roll a Mark II, and if you have a Mark II, you can't roll a Mark I. But if you have a Mark II, there's really no reason to trade it out and try and get the original, but I can see where the devs were going here, because you might get the original ray gun, and maybe you have to decide either to keep it or to trade it out to keep rolling for the Mark II instead, so now you're more vulnerable. There's also that ray gun perma-perk on Buried where you can like get it off the wall and stuff, but that's two-bone talk, we don't talk about that. The Black Ops 3 ray gun is just kind of a dull one. They redesigned it again, and they changed the reload animation, but now it just kinda looks like the original ray gun, so why did they even do the Black Ops 2 redesign? I don't know, who knows. Anyway, this ray gun really isn't all that noteworthy. The damage and stuff is the exact same as before. I do have more to say about it, but you're just gonna have to wait until I get to the ray gun phenomenon later. Black Ops 3 added alternate ammo types, more often called AATs, which were basically that game's wonder weapon. Unfortunately, these were only available for traditional lead-based bullet weapons. That means that wonder weapons are not included, and the ray gun got left out. This is a huge reason for the ray gun being lame in this game. When multiple of the AATs are capable of killing infinitely and rapidly, the ray gun not getting it really hurts its power. Another issue is that every gun in Black Ops 3 is just frankly great. Even starting weapons like the RK5, Shiva, and the KRM can carry you into the teens with good headshots and double tap, no pack-a-punch required. When you mix that with the special ammo types, it often turns out that the best gun to use in Black Ops 3 is just a bog standard wall weapon you can buy ammo for. Why get a Wunderwaffe when you could just stick the Wunderwaffe shot on your RK5 instead? Black Ops 3 also brought back the Mark II and introduced us to the Mark III, both of which are leaps and bounds better than the Mark I. The Mark III is one of the easiest guns by far to use that'll carry you to round 50 without even having to move, and the headshot multiplier on the Mark II keeps it relevant even longer than that. It's really hard to make any case that the normal ray gun is even worth picking up here. The Black Ops 4 ray gun is definitely an interesting one. It got yet another redesign, the prettiest of them all if I do say so myself. This time around though, the beams that it shoots are much smaller. This means that you actually have to aim, and the splash damage range is much lower, and the reload speed is noticeably slower too. Plus, BO4 doesn't have double tap, which means there's no way for you to shoot it any faster than normal, and that actually applies for all games from now on. Double tap hasn't shown up in Treyarch Zombies since Black Ops 3 in 2015, which means that if you remember double tap, you officially get UNC status. Those are a lot of cons, so you might be wondering how they offset that. Well, first off, it does like 0 splash damage to you now. I think it literally does 25 damage, which means you'd have to shoot yourself 16 times with it to kill yourself, and I mean honestly, at that point, if you died to this thing, you probably deserved it, and if you really can't handle that, you can use PhD Slider. Second, it apparently has a headshot multiplier. Because Black Ops 4 is on Battle.net and is always online, I can't mod it to tell you exactly what this multiplier is, but the wiki said it, so it must be totally true, right? They also put in this super cool inspect for it, but because nothing can ever be perfect for zombies, the inspect button doesn't even work. Yeah, you can only do it in Blackout. If I could meet whoever disabled this, I'd probably punch them, because the inspect button is like my digital fidget spinner. Alpha Omega gave us dual-wield elemental ray gun Mark IIs, which sound far cooler than they are, and take too much effort to get, so I don't really do it, but it's the thought that counts, right? They also ditched the limit thing, and now you can just get both ray guns at the same time. There's no more trade-off. That's pretty weird since these ray guns are statistically buffed compared to how they used to be, but I mean, I'm not complaining, I love this thing. Black Ops 4's normal bullet guns actually aren't very powerful like they were in BO3, but what makes the ray gun redundant is the massive amount of tools at your disposal. You see, BO4 has so many different ways to kill zombies besides shooting them. You spawn in with an infinite damage specialist weapon, you can summon any 4 of your super broken elixirs at any time you want with only like a 30-second cooldown. You can spawn in with wraith fires that insta-kill for like forever and recharge on their own. The shield weapons do tons of damage. The Helion Salvo rocket launcher alone is capable of one-shot one-shotting zombies forever and is basically the wonder weapon of every map. I can go on. Chances are, if you're playing BO4, you're not just walking in a circle and shooting zombies with your ICR, you're probably doing something that doesn't even involve shooting a normal gun. The ray gun really isn't even a thought in your mind. I've known some people who didn't even know there was a ray gun in this game, because it's only on the 4 Ether maps and not on any of the 4 Chaos maps. Everyone knows that Cold War's ray gun is a real treat without a doubt. This is hands down the best ray gun we've ever had in zombies history. First, and most importantly, they fixed the inspect. Kind of. It plays like super fast for some reason, but at least you can actually do it now. Okay, second, this thing does some freaking damage. They kept the headshot multiplier from Black Ops 4, so those headshots are going to do wonders for you here. The base version out of the box does just as much damage as the pack version from before, and when you full pack this thing, it does up to 5 times as much damage as before, capping out at 10,000 damage. This thing actually used to be even better. They had to nerf it because it was just so damn good, and even after the nerf, it's basically the best thing you can get in the whole game. Hell, all of the wonder weapons in Cold War are pretty amazing. I mean, the Die Shockwave wasn't great at launch, but now that they've buffed it, it's great. All 5 of these wonder weapons really are just like top tier. This ray gun does still have the slower reload time, and they actually nerfed the ammo count down to 100 normally and 200 upgraded, but it honestly doesn't even matter because the damage it does is so infinitely worth that tiny trade-off. Plus, zombies just drop ammo for you to pick up. It does cost 10,000 points to buy ammo for it, but again, it's really worth it. In Forsaken, they also put in PhD sliders, so that takes away all the splash damage, of which there was basically none before anyway. So that just makes it even more broken. Plus, if you're using Elemental Pop, you can finally get alternate ammo types on your ray gun. These aren't quite as busted as BO3s were, but they're still pretty much the next best thing and are great for taking down hordes fast. There's even tons more ways to get it now. You can get it from the box, from the Coffin Dance Easter egg, from Ronald Raygun, from killing an Order or a Megaton, from doing trials, from opening a loot crate. It really just doesn't stop. The only real caveat to how you get it now is that it's much rarer. The rarity system that Cold War introduced means that box weapons aren't necessarily on a strictly RNG basis now. Now there's a statistical chance that if you're on a lower round, you're less likely to get a ray gun. So if you're spinning the box anytime before like round 30, good luck getting a ray gun. But anyway, this thing is easily viable, even all the way up into health cap at round 55, so it's permanently worth having, especially with Mule Kick. Cold War does have a pretty insane shotgun meta, but those are by far the best bullet weapons in the game, but even the ray gun still stands out and doesn't suffer like the BO3 one did. Funnily enough, Vanguard didn't even have a ray gun at launch, and they didn't add it until Season 2. Yeah, Season 2. Plus, it was just an overall downgrade. First of all, it shakes your screen like hell and blinds you. Second, it does objectively less damage than before. It's still good, but they nerfed it by like 33% I think, and there's no way to negate the splash damage. The perk system in Vanguard and the overall limited playstyles means that a lot of the variability that the ray gun had in Cold War is now kind of gone, and this one is just another step back. If I were to compare it to another games, I'd probably say it's most similar to the Black Ops 4 ray gun. It's still very capable of killing, but it's not really worth picking over a shotgun, which is still the broken meta in this game. The only positive I can give this ray gun really is that they finally fixed the inspect animation and it works like normal. Only took 3 tries. MW3's ray gun is about the same as Cold War's. With the way this game works, it doesn't necessarily do a defined amount of damage, and there's no damage numbers for us to look at, so we can't really know what it is, but I can tell you here that it's still pretty good and is a 2-shot kill when it's fully packed in the tier 3 red zone, which lines up with how it performs at health cap in Cold War. Because of how the stash system in this game works, you can actually spawn in with one now, which kind of makes it pretty powerful to just start the game with. It doesn't really do any splash damage to you, but there's PhD flopper back anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Once you've secured the schematic for it, you can spawn in with the ray gun for free once every 48 hours, or you can find cases to hold onto for future matches, get them from events, battle passes, and even store bundles. Yeah, you can just buy ray guns with real money now. What a time to be alive, right? I haven't done a ton of research on it, but that shotgun meta from the last 2 games seems to be kind of gone. They're kind of a hit or miss now, and they're not super reliable. The wonder weapons are definitely my go-to choices here, but assault rifles are pretty good too, and some SMGs like the Ram 9. There have also been game modes in multiplayer and Warzone that let you get the ray gun, and I think it was like a 2-shot kill there, I think. Now, Black Ops 6 isn't out yet, but we've seen some ray gun gameplay and it looks pretty good. It's got a new brighter color, a new inspect animation, and a new reload animation too. Plus, when you shoot it, the wheel in the back spins, which looks pretty cool. I'm pretty optimistic that this ray gun will be just as great as the one in Cold War. Treyarch really seems to have taken care lately to make sure that the ray gun is getting the love and care that it definitely deserves. It's September right now, and Black Ops 6 doesn't come out for another month and a half or so, but I am definitely super excited to get into Terminus and try out this super awesome looking ray gun. Remember that ray gun phenomenon I mentioned earlier? Yeah, we're talking about that now. Think about these ray guns. Statistically, they are all basically identical, especially from World at War to Black Ops 3. But I bet you probably have a favorite. I bet there's one that just feels really good to you. For me, I think it's the Black Ops 2 one. It just feels good, but I'm also pretty nostalgic for the Black Ops one. I also feel like the Black Ops 3 ray gun just totally sucks, but it shouldn't, right? There's no reason for it to, because it's the same. It's not just this one. I feel like the World at War ray gun is more powerful than the Black Ops one, but they're the exact same. Not until Black Ops 4 is there actually a reason that they should feel different, at least according to the wiki's potentially sketchy statistics. Everyone who has played zombies knows what I'm talking about. These things just feel so wildly different, but it's hard to explain. I'll take a stab at it. My guess is that the feel of the damage of the ray gun is because it feels relative to the other weapons in the game. So in World at War, where there's only a couple of high damage weapons, the ray gun feels pretty good. Same goes for Black Ops, but in Black Ops 2 with Double Tap 2 and Pack-a-Punch, most of the assault rifles and LMGs are pretty dang good and will carry you up to 30 fairly easily. Like the Olympia, it's a 500 point wall weapon, and after you pack it and get Double Tap, it kills nearly up to round 30. That's way better than a ray gun, and you can buy ammo for it. Like, the ray gun permaperk is literally a detriment because the bog standard Olympia is better than this thing is. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that's the correct explanation, but I think it sounds kind of right. I used Black Ops 2 as an example, but it really fits even better with Black Ops 3 because the guns in that game are pretty reliably killing up to like round 40, so that ray gun that starts two-shotting on round 15 just really feels like a hunk of junk. If I remember right, I actually think that the KRM wall buy with Double Tap does more damage than the ray gun does. Yeah, the 750 point shotgun. Crazy, right? Absolutely, please let me know in the comments what your favorite ray gun is and what your take on this weird little ray gun phenomenon is. I really do want to hear what you have to say about it. Now, I could have ended the video there and it'd be pretty fine, good video, but let's get a little interesting here. Let's talk about all the weird or obscure or forgotten ray guns. Our first one is from the phone version of World at War. I can't record my own footage of this because you need to have an actual really old iPod or iPhone or iPad to play it, and I don't, so here's just whatever I found on YouTube. This ray gun is definitely a weird one. First of all, it has no splash damage against you, so you can't kill yourself with it. Sorry. We also don't know the exact damage for it, but apparently it's lower than the actual one from World at War and is different for different maps, which is just like, what? Anyway, it actually keeps some of its color when you pack it too, which is pretty cool. And for the smart ones of you out there that were thinking outside of the box, there is no ray gun on the Wii version. I thought that maybe the ray gun Easter egg and little resistance would work on the Wii, but it doesn't. Apparently this Black Ops mobile ray gun was added in an update and wasn't actually there on launch, so I guess it beat Vanguard to that. This one just looks ugly for some reason. I have no idea. It literally looks worse than the World at War one, but hey, what do I know about making phone games? Apparently you can also reload cancel the ray gun in World at War on the phone, which is kinda interesting, but if you're reload canceling in zombies on your iPod Touch 3rd generation, I think you have bigger problems you should be worrying about. Also, zombies on the DS just straight up doesn't have a ray gun, just like World at War on the Wii. Which sucks. I would love to see a ray gun on the DS, that would be interesting. COD Online was shut down a couple years back, so there's no real way to use this ray gun anymore, but we know that it's aesthetically the same as the Black Ops ray gun, except there's no front sight for some reason. Ammo, though, is where this thing differs. For some reason, it apparently only has 5 shots, and only one player can pick it up. I have no idea what they were cooking here. I think there was also a multiplayer mode where they let you use the ray gun, but I'm not 100% sure. It is COD Online, though, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing. The COD mobile ray gun is actually a pretty nice one. It looks a lot like the BO3 ray gun. This thing got added and removed like 5 times over, but I think it's still in the game now. I don't know. I don't have COD mobile installed on my phone, and I don't have the 2 terabytes that it needs. Basically, there's 2 modes in COD Mobile. There's Classic Survival, and then there's Undead Siege. Siege is basically zombies on the Blackout map, and you go gather resources and kill streaks, and then you defend an objective every few minutes. In classic survival, the ray gun is pretty normal, except the ammo is a little different. It starts with 120 shots, and then you can get up to 240 apparently, but the mag size stays at 20. In Undead Siege though is where things get weird. This thing holds up to 520 shots, with 56 loaded. Yeah, I have no words for that. Plus you can just find it sitting on the ground, which is kind of funny. This epic legendary weapon, and it's just hanging out on the floor of a random grain silo. Also, you can pack punch it a whole 5 times. The ray gun has been in almost every single zombies experience to date, and that's definitely for a reason. People want it there. There was tons of outcry in Vanguard when there wasn't one at all. Even if we're not going to use it because shotguns are broken for the 6th game in a row, it just being there is super important to all of us. It's the defining face or symbol of zombies. Even though it definitely got kinda iffy there in the middle with BO3, thankfully the ray gun came out on top in the end and is definitely always worth your time now and lives up to its absolutely legendary status.